Who determined that for you?
Senator, no groups were monitored. The information that's sought by the local municipalities was situational awareness in my municipality, what's happening in and around my critical infrastructure. They never asked me for a group. They never asked me for individuals.
Okay, but earlier, her name, Ms. Cody was saying that they showed up at a family reunion. You know, how did they know to do that?
I can't answer that.
Okay. You also said that you talked to the state police, and the state police had let you know that they did have questions about this. Did Federal Homeland Security ever express any concerns about this?
Not to me, no. The Department of Homeland Security received the bulletin. Their 3 protective security advisors and regional advisors received the bulletin every single time.
All right. So when you collected the information, where did it go? Where would an anti-tax issue go? Where would a pro-Second Amendment issue go? Where did you report this information? Who did you report it to?
The information that came to me was melded with information from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and put in the bulletin. And as I mentioned, it went to about 800 law enforcement officers every single time.
Did it ever go to any private entities?
It did. Depending upon the sector it went to, depending upon the sector involved in the bulletin, it went to that sector. If it was chemical, if it was ag, if it was transportation, went to the transportation entities. In this particular case, the reason for the hearing today, obviously, is on the anti-drilling Marcellus Shale issue associated with this. It went to the security directors of the Marcellus Shale companies and DEP.
So when you give this information to private entities, but what would they have to do with actually stopping terrorism, agriculture? You know, I don't understand that. I mean, is one of the issues with the state police that they couldn't share that information with private entities? Would that have been one of the reasons you didn't want to, or didn't choose to use the state police, because you said you've been there a few times, but you hadn't really talked to them about whether or not they could handle it. You just assumed that from your relationship with them.
If I may address the first part, the first question. It was not about terrorism, it was about all hazard situational awareness. Nobody ever called these groups terrorists or threats. The owners and operators of the 85% of our critical infrastructure, they're the only ones who can do something about their own situational awareness. About, I guess it was mid-August, the FBI put out a bulletin about environmental extremists, I think was the word that we used, environmental extremists, because there had been a nexus and they had seen a trend and a pattern developing across the Marcellus Shale region about incidents and criminal acts of vandalism and so forth associated with the drilling sites. So we did not put this out as a threat or an indicator. It's just situational awareness that groups were demonstrating, protesting, and nobody ever said anything about their First Amendment rights being violated. It was just about situational awareness. It was not to highlight them in any way. They were no more highlighted, Senator, than the other groups mentioned throughout the bulletins.
None of that really makes any sense to me at all, that we would go monitor private citizens and private groups and they're not a threat to us, is what you're just saying. That's just for awareness. It makes absolutely no sense, and it does make me think, where are we living?
If I could say something in rebuttal. As I mentioned before, we never targeted groups. We never targeted individuals.
Did you ever?
That was not the goal of the program.
Did you ever monitor elected officials?
No, we did not.
Okay, and I just have one question for you, General French. You said that you had not talked to the governor or the governor's office. Is anyone in your department, did your department ever work with the governor's office on this? Maybe not just you, but anybody in general. Did they know about any of this before?
Relative to the approval of the contract, which was the question that I was answering before Senator Ward, I did not consult with the governor's office or with the governor himself on the contract per se. Information that was in the bulletin was distributed based upon whatever the focus areas were, in other words, the critical infrastructure areas. That did include the Governor's Council for Preparedness, the GPIMC.
Okay, I guess I really wasn't referring to just the bulletins. I was getting back to when it started, when you began this contract. Did anyone from your offices work with anyone from the governor's office in determining whether or not to do this or proceed with this?
No, ma'am. It was done internally based off the investment justifications and the allocations that DHS gives us as far as the parameters.
Senator May.
I have a couple of comments. Thank you so much for that enlightening testimony. I will take your word anytime. In what you stated, Major Bivens, is in direct conflict to what earlier testimony that we heard, that they didn't have any of these entities, they didn't have specific entities targeted, and they didn't have them on any kind of terror list, if I guess maybe that's a broader term, that they were just doing situational awareness, and that is in direct conflict of what you just said, and I will take your word any day of the week. This contract was a no-bid contract. Is that how you usually get your work? Do you usually have to bid for work, or?
Let's separate it out, please, if we may, from governmental agencies to private agencies. This is our only governmental agency that we had a contract with. And so this particular one was, in fact, not a bid, but it's because of our unique capabilities. With other contracts in the private sector, no, almost all of them is based on the fact that we have a strong reputation for providing good intelligence, and people come to us.
And is the people that work for you or with your firm, are any of them related to anyone here in the government?
Not that I'm aware.
State government?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay, and then I just want to address one more issue, that situational awareness phrase, words that were used so heavily earlier. Could almost everything you do, from Homeland Security threats to domestic threats, could they all be classified as situational awareness in one way or another?
Not all, but many do have to deal with that. An example being, and unfortunately it's now a public document, for example, smuggling. During the FIFA World Cup, we put out information, specific communications, internal jihadist communications, that dealt with how to smuggle explosives into a soccer venue in South Africa. Exactly the same tactic could be used to smuggle explosives into Beaver Stadium, or a Pittsburgh football game, or a Philadelphia football game. And so you can call that situational awareness. It's letting people know what tactics are being discussed and advising them to take steps to reduce the threat of those tactics.
Thank you.